Hi everyone. So I wasn't sure how I wanted to make this video, but basically I drove across Canada, got back about a week ago. It was almost exactly a month-long trip. I wasn't sure, I wanted to make a bit more of a sophisticated video, uh, like with partially a slideshow and then partially showing my routes on Google Maps and some things on Google Maps, but I figured I'm not going to do it that way. I'm just going to show about 300 photos that I took. I took like almost 6,000 photos, I think, in total, but I narrowed it down to 300 that I'll show in the video. They're not necessarily the most interesting photos or the best photos I took, but I think they're the ones that best kind of highlight what I did on the trip or the routes that I took and stuff like that. Yeah, so basically all the photos are from my phone, which is a Samsung S9. So I think the quality is pretty good when you're zoomed out, but when you zoom in, because it doesn't have, or it's only digital zoom, it doesn't have whatever the opposite of digital zoom is, I guess optical zoom. So yeah, uh, it's kind of blurry when you zoom in, so I tried to not select that many photos that were zoomed in. Anyway, here's my route. The goal was to get to St. John's as quickly as safely possible, and I did that in like 7.5 days. So like the 8th day I was in St. John's in the afternoon. However, you have to delay it a bit just because you have to make sure you get to the Newfoundland ferry at a good time. I could have made it like half a day earlier, but I didn't want to take the night ferry without having a room on the ship, and the bedrooms were all full. They're all booked. So anyway, this is the route if you're interested. I'm gonna get more specific once I show the photos, but let's get this started. So I didn't take any photos in BC. Didn't take any photos other than this in Banff National Park either, just because I'd already been there, and also you have to pay to get into the park or to stop in the park. You're allowed to drive through without paying, but yeah, so I just went through the park because I wanted to get past Calgary that night. I didn't spend much time in Calgary, just drove around a bit and then went to the viewpoint on the north side of the river. Calgary is a great city. It's probably one of my favorite, probably one of my top 5 favorite Canadian cities. It's just very clean. It's not necessarily the most interesting place, but it's just pleasant. It's clean. It feels safe. The roads are nice. The skyline's nice. So yeah. So I ended up staying in Strathmore, Alberta that night. I just slept in my car. This is in Medicine Hat. It was just a nice church across the river from downtown, and Medicine Hat was a lot, I didn't really think it would be anything that interesting, but it was a very nice town. Again, not the most interesting place, but pretty pleasant. And I noticed that this is, by the way, the world's largest teepee, which is also in Medicine Hat. I noticed with Alberta, a lot of the towns are just nicer. Just people seem to care more about their property, making their property look nice. The towns are just clean and well maintained when compared to a lot of other provinces. And then I got into Saskatchewan. I believe it was still in the morning that day. And I drove across the whole province that day. So this was in Moose Jaw, the world's largest moose. His name is Mac the Moose. You'll see a better moose statue later, but this is the world's biggest one. And they also have an Air Force base there, so they had a statue of a plane, Canadian Forces plane. And then this is in Regina. I took a bit of a detour to get to Regina. There's a bit of a hailstorm, so I didn't. I delayed my entry to Regina by about an hour. So yeah, I really like their Legislature Building. The city is not the nicest city in Canada, but the area around the Legislature Building is pretty nice. If you look the other way, you can see Wascana Lake, I believe it's called, and their downtown. I didn't really get many photos of their downtown. I just went around it. I didn't drive through it, but I do like those two buildings that are kind of a mirror image of each other, even if their skyline isn't that spectacular. I then drove up to Mosaic Stadium, which is the Rough Riders Stadium. It's a new stadium. The old stadium got torn down, so there's nothing there now. And then I got to Manitoba just before it got dark. Pretty much just drove through Saskatchewan. I didn't do much stopping. It is actually a nicer province than most people probably think, but I was again in a rush just to get to the East Coast. So I ended up staying in Brandon that night, again, just sleeping in my car. Then, I don't know, this honestly wasn't worth the detour off the highway, but in Portage la Prairie, they have the world's largest Coke can. Basically, they have like the newer bypass highway around the city, and then you have to take the old route through the city if you want to see this. But it took quite a while just because there's construction and stuff, so I don't know. If you're interested in this stuff, I guess you could stop, but other than that, I wouldn't really recommend going through Portage la Prairie. It's not the nicest town, really. It's not really bad, but it's not that nice either. And then I got to Winnipeg, and I didn't spend much time in Winnipeg because I knew I'd be there on the way back. I just stopped at the Legislature Building quickly. It's a nice building, but they're doing construction on the, I believe this is the north side, and then the east side there's a bit of a protest, and I couldn't find parking there. Even here I just parked, well, not really parked illegally, but like I wasn't blocking traffic, but I don't think I was allowed to park there. It's reserved or something, so I just hopped onto the median quickly to take some photos, and then left, and then got to Ontario. I don't like around 3 or 4 that evening. The roads through Manitoba were pretty boring, but once you got into Ontario, it was actually pretty nice. There's a lot of lakes and stuff along highway. I don't even know actually if it's Highway 11 or 17, but anyway, I believe it's 17. But yeah, that was quite a nice drive. But the problem with Ontario is that it's just so big. It takes so long to get across northern Ontario. So even if the scenery is nice, it's pretty hard. It's pretty rough, just because of how long it takes, basically. So just before it got dark, I got to Thunder Bay, which I wasn't very impressed by Thunder Bay, so I didn't take any photos on the way east, at least. But then I stopped at the Terry Fox Memorial, which is close to the spot where he unfortunately had to stop his run across Canada. But there was also a nice view from the statue, which you'll see later. I then stayed in Nipigon, Ontario, which is about an hour east of Thunder Bay. Just slept in the car again, and then in the morning I saw this big staircase thing that you got a viewpoint at the top of. So this bridge is just on the east side of Nipigon. It's kind of an interesting story behind the bridge because I believe it was in 2016. It was closed completely to traffic for I don't know how long, a day or something, and that was significant because this is the only route between eastern and western Canada. There's no alternate routes across this river. There are a few parts actually that are like this where there's only one road connecting the east and west in Canada. I think all of those are in northern Ontario though. I believe between Thunder Bay and Kenora there might be another, or no, between Kenora and Manitoba there might be another situation where there's only one road that you can take. Because east of here you can kind of see a junction there. This is where Highway 11 and 17 split. So I ended up taking Highway 11, which is I believe the fastest route to get to Ottawa. So this is just a Snowman Statue in Beardmore, Ontario. There's a lot of just weird like roadside attraction type things in northern Ontario. I wasn't really expecting that. This is also in Beardmore. They just had a weird Bigfoot statue at a hotel. I don't know why, but obviously it made me stop there. It didn't really make me spend any money though, so I'm not sure if it's really worthy of like a good worthwhile investment for that motel. But anyway, this is what I was saying earlier, that there'd be a better moose statue. This is in Hearst, Ontario. The eyes are pretty weird, but other than that, the moose is pretty nice and detailed. So Hearst was kind of interesting because I wasn't expecting this, but it's like not over 90% French speaking, and then Kapuskasing, the next town, which you'll see later, is like 2/3 French speaking. So this is part of the same display. Another thing that you have to be aware of though is that the drive like from Hearst west to Long Lac is I think like 2 hours, and there's no services at all. There might be a couple outhouses like for washrooms, but there's no gas stations, there's no food. So yeah, it's pretty rural, or like pretty empty up there, sparsely populated. So this is Kapuskasing. It's actually a decent, or this part of the town was pretty nice actually, but there is this big industrial thing going on there. And then another one of these roadside attraction things is Moonbeam, Ontario. So they had this alien thing. This is just east of Kapuskasing. And then they had this statue of this guy called Guy Paul, or Guy Paul, I guess it'd be pronounced, who's this extremely stereotypical French Canadian lumberjack. I believe it's somewhere near Iroquois Falls along Highway 11. And then this is in Temiskaming Shores, the world's oh no, it's not the world's largest cow. It's a big cow. I don't know if it's the world's largest or not, but I don't know. For some reason, this is one of my favorite roadside attractions. I don't know why. So I ended up staying in North Bay that night in a hotel, the first hotel of the trip. So yeah, the drive across northern Ontario, there was some nice scenery, but it was pretty tough to do. It's quite repetitive, a lot of trees. So this is Nipissing Lake, I believe it's called, in North Bay. The lakeshore is pretty nice. The rest of the town wasn't that interesting or nice, but yeah, I did like the lakeshore. And then I got to Ottawa that day. This is Canadian Tire Center, or Centre Canadian Tire if you're French. This is the French side apparently. This is where the Senators play, and nobody goes to watch them because the stadium or the arena supposedly is too far out of Ottawa, I guess. I don't know. And the team's not good, I guess. That's probably a bigger factor. This is from the other side. This one kind of annoyed me just because I couldn't get the whole building in the photo, and yeah, just from where I parked, it was hard, and I couldn't move any farther away from it from this angle. I was just sitting in my car. And then I was very happy about this, so I went into Ottawa, and somehow I got this parking spot right across the street from the Supreme Court. This is my car. It's all dirty from Saskatchewan when I was taking some gravel roads right after a rainstorm. But yeah, because it was after 6 p.m. or something, or 5 p.m. or whatever the time thing was. Or maybe it's because it was a weekend, actually. That's why there's a lot of park here. So I was pretty excited about that. So walked around Ottawa. Ottawa outside of this area is not that interesting or really that worth visiting, really. But definitely the area around the legislative or the parliament buildings definitely are worth visiting. Very nice area. Very interesting architecture. This is, I believe, the Prime Minister's office. So this is like right across the street from the Parliament buildings. This is from behind the Parliament buildings. I don't know why I didn't put the Parliament buildings photos in first, but whatever. Here we go. This is from near the flame. You can see the flame there. I think it's called a Centennial Flame. So with the Parliament building, there's construction going on. I think it's been going on for many years, and it's still going to be going on for many years, so just keep that in mind. You won't be able to walk right up to the building, and the view from the back will be obstructed a bit, as you saw in this photo. Yeah, so then there's a Terry Fox statue again across the street from the Parliament building. And then this is the Bank of Canada. I thought it was kind of interesting because they incorporated the old facade of the building with this new modern building behind it. And then this is the Supreme Court. I don't know, I was kind of excited about this photo because when you see in the news a story about a Supreme Court case or something, they generally use a stock photo that looks like this with the sign there. So I don't know. Anyway, so from Ottawa, kind of skipping ahead here, but I just drove through Montreal. I didn't stop in Montreal because I knew I'd go to Montreal on the way back. And I ended up sleeping in my car in Drummondville at a truck stop. And then in the next day, I went to Lévis, across from Quebec City, and just took some photos of Quebec City. I didn't actually go into Quebec City because, again, I'd be going there on the way back. But Lévis is actually an interesting town as well. You have this nice cliff thing, so you have a bit of like a park and then a few buildings at the bottom of the cliff, but most of the town is at the top of the cliff, and they just had some nice old buildings there as well. So I started making my way to New Brunswick, and I visited the town of St. Louis du Haha, which is the only place in the world that has two exclamation marks in its name. So this is about halfway between the St. Lawrence River and the New Brunswick border. It's right on the way to New Brunswick, so you're not going out of your way to, if you want to get a photo of this or visit the town. So then, yeah, I pretty much just drove quickly through New Brunswick because, again, I'd be doing it on the way back. So I stopped for gas twice and then and I stopped here. So other than that, I didn't really stop in New Brunswick, but this is the Legislative Building in Fredericton. Very nice building. Fredericton's a nice town as well, but you'll see a few photos later. It's not the most interesting town, but it's pleasant. Yeah, so this, I don't know, this is the first stop sign I really noticed or paid attention to that had, or first that I had an opportunity to take a photo of, I guess, that was bilingual. Then, as I said, kind of rushed through New Brunswick, got to Nova Scotia. It was still light out, but it was getting dark soon, so I ended up staying in Truro at a kind of a weird visitor center. I'm not really sure if I was allowed to sleep there in the car, but I did it anyway. I didn't have any, nobody gave me any trouble. So then I did the Cabot Trail or Cabot Trail. I'm not sure how it's pronounced. I didn't hear anyone say it, and I didn't say it to anyone else to give them an opportunity to correct me, because I believe John Cabot was Italian, so... yeah, I don't know if it's... I'm going to say Cabot, because if I say Cabot, I'll sound stupid if that's incorrect. If I say Cabot and that's incorrect, at least I'm saying it how it's spelled, so whatever. So yeah, just a lot of nice scenery along this road. Actually, that wasn't on Cabot Trail. This was on the coastal road that gets to it, because I wanted to stay on the coast as long as possible. But there's my car at the Atlantic Ocean. As you can see, a lot of the Saskatchewan dirt has been rained away, but there's still some there. So in Cheticamp, Nova Scotia, I got this donair, which apparently donair is more like a taco, like except with pita bread, whereas in Vancouver when you get a donair, it's wrapped all the way around like a burrito, so that's kind of interesting. I believe the donair was invented in Halifax, so I guess we're the ones that do it wrong. This is at the start of Cape Breton Highlands National Park, so you do have to pay if you want to stop anywhere in the park, and you have to display your park pass in your windshield, but I definitely think it's worth the whatever it is, like $8 or something. Definitely worth visiting. I did it twice, this time on the way to Newfoundland, and then I did it on the way back as well. Yeah, so it's just a lot of nice coastal scenery. Highly recommend it. There's this iconic photo of the road kind of going up and down along the coast, over a cliff or through a cliff. There's actually a nice waterfall there too as well. Honestly, don't remember what it's called. But yeah, there's a lot of really nice coastal scenery. Highly recommend going there. Even if you're in Halifax, I highly recommend driving up to Cape Breton. It's couple hours, maybe 3 hours or something. This is the world's biggest fiddle. Unfortunately, it was raining, but this is in Sydney, Nova Scotia. I ate at that restaurant. I had some lobster. Very good, but again, lobster is pretty expensive. The thing that annoyed me though with the Atlantic provinces is that the signs for like the menu boards would have the prices for most items, but for lobster things it would just say market price, but it wouldn't tell you what the market price was, so you had to ask them, which I don't know, I find kind of annoying, because it shouldn't be that hard to have a temporary sign telling everyone the market price before they ask, because sometimes you have to line up and stuff just to be able to ask them what the price is. So that's one criticism I'd have, but lobster is very good. I had lobster, I think 4 times or something in the Maritimes. So then I got onto the boat to get to Newfoundland. So this was day 7, I believe. I took the daytime ferry. You have to get there like 2 hours before, so like 9:30, because it leaves at 11:30. But yeah, I got a room on the ferry. For daytime sailings, the room is about $50 or $60, I think. They didn't have any 2-bed rooms, so I got a 4-bed room, so it's kind of unnecessary because you have the room all to yourself. But it was nice. You get a shower, you get your own private bathroom. The boat's not that interesting, really. There's not much on the boat. There's a couple restaurants and stuff, but I didn't really I walked around when I first got on the boat, but it's not really too interesting, so I just stayed in my room. You get a TV and everything. You don't get cell coverage the whole trip, and there's no Wi-Fi, or at least the Wi-Fi is not available in the room, so if you want to watch videos or something, you have to download them beforehand. This is not a great photo because the windows are kind of dirty, but this is just from my room on the I guess they're called cabins, not rooms, but from my cabin on the ferry of Port aux Basques, Newfoundland. So it's pretty much my first sighting of Newfoundland, so I was very excited. So yeah, keep in mind I forgot to mention this, but I hadn't been anywhere east of Montreal in Canada before this trip, and I hadn't been anywhere east of Portland, Maine in North America. So yeah, so this is off the ferry in Port aux Basques, Newfoundland. Nice town. But yeah, this is oh, I forgot to mention I stayed in Sydney before the ferry, and then I stayed in Deer Lake, Newfoundland, which is like 3 hours north of Port aux Basques. And then this is the following day in St. John's. My first meal in St. John's was Mary Brown's, which is a very good chicken chain that we have all across Canada, but they're from Newfoundland. They're all over the place in Newfoundland, but as you may notice, the drink is kind of weird. It's birch beer, which is another drink that I'd highly recommend. If you're in Newfoundland, it's a good, I don't know, it's really tasty. It's kind of hard to explain it, but explain the taste, but it's good nonetheless. You should try it. So basically my goal of reaching the other side of the country had been successful. This again was the 8th day of the trip. This is a view from Signal Hill, I believe, which is not the easternmost point in Canada, but it's a very iconic viewpoint. A nice view of St. John's from Signal Hill. I definitely say St. John's is one of my favorite cities in Canada as well. It's just so much different than anywhere else in Canada, probably anywhere else in the world. Just the architecture, just the vibe of the city, and then just the location of the harbor with these nice cliffs and mountains beside them, beside the harbor. It's really nice. So this is the actual building at Signal Hill. They set off the cannons, which is kind of interesting, pretty loud. And then this is from Cape Spear, which is the easternmost point in North America. I was kind of confused as to where the actual easternmost point was, because they had a sign that pointed, or that just said that this is the easternmost point in Canada, but I wasn't sure exactly where it was referring to. I suspected it could be this part or it could be that part, but they had the sign here nonetheless. So this will bring us into the next chapter of the trip, kind of. Okay, so the waterfall in Cape Breton Highlands National Park that I forgot the name of, I believe it's called Banff Falls. I don't know how to pronounce it. I think it's Gaelic. But anyway, that brings us to the next part of the trip, which was Newfoundland. There's already a couple of photos of Newfoundland, but this is kind of the part where I'm backtracking back west for the first time in this trip. So St. John's, as I said, just one of my favorite cities in Canada. It's just so unique, the style of the buildings. Unfortunately, I got the hood of a car in this one. It's kind of hard to get photos without cars or people in them. And also wires were all over the place, so pretty much impossible to get photos without wires. So I just spent a few hours wandering around downtown St. John's. It's, again, just a nice city. It's quite busy, a lot of pedestrians, a lot of restaurants, which it just feels bigger than a city of, I think they have like around 200,000 people, but it felt a lot bigger, which I noticed was the case for a lot of these maritime cities. As you can see up there, there's Signal Hill. I guess I can move my cursor around it up there. So yeah, the harbor is really interesting. This is the Legislature Building, which I think to me doesn't really fit in with the rest of the city. It's a nice building. I like the building, but yeah, I don't know. I was expecting something else for Newfoundland, because this is one of the few that I actually wasn't familiar with beforehand. But yeah, this, as you can see here, like even this is a newer building, but they still try to keep with that style of the bright colors, which I think was interesting, because it's really unique, and like no other city in Canada has the colors like Newfoundland, like St. John's has, especially like the bright colors like yellow. And then this is another photo of the interesting pop that you can get in Newfoundland. So pineapple crush and then cream soda crush, which we have here in the rest of Canada. But in the rest of Canada, cream soda crush is pink. and then the birch beer, and then crush lime, which I didn't really like that much actually. Yeah, so this is Maddox Cove, which is just a bit farther south of St. John's. I took the Irish Loop, which is the loop around the bottom of Avalon Peninsula, which I'd also highly recommend. It takes like maybe 4 hours if you're not stopping much, but probably takes more than that because I assume you'll want to stop to take some photos. There's some interesting parts that didn't have any trees, which is kind of, as someone from Vancouver, it's kind of unique or different for me. This is sunset. This was St. Mary's, and then the next day, yeah. So there's the town of Dildo, which is kind of like, regardless of the name or beyond the name, it's actually a nice town as well. I think I should mention though that I stayed in St. John's. Actually, at Cape Spear, I stayed in the parking lot, slept in the car for 2 nights. So this is the next day. This is just a bit west of St. John's. It's only a detour of maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes each way off of the highway. So I would say it's worth visiting. But you had that guy, and then you had the dildo sign on top of the mountain. But it is, as I said, it was a nice town, regardless of the humor in the name. But yeah, post office there, I don't know, I just Newfoundland had a lot of funny named places. I think that's one of the things they're known for. Anyway, and then I went up to Bonavista, which I'd highly recommend visiting there. They had this lighthouse. They also had a puffin colony. As you can see, there's this fox wandering down the road. But the puffin colony, the photos on my camera didn't turn out, but on my phone didn't turn out because they're very small birds and they're quite far away, but they had a binocular lens thing that you could look through and you could see them, so I highly recommend going there. But yeah, this fox, I was just driving on the road back to the town of Bonavista, and the fox was in the middle of the road. Luckily there's no cars around, so I could just stop there. So I just stopped for it, and then it like walked right up to the side of my car and looked at me, and I realized, like, oh shit, I should roll up the window because I don't know if it's gonna jump in. So this is from my car. I know it looks like I'm right up next to it, but he's the one that approached me, and I was in the car, so I felt safe. And then this is probably one of the highlights of the trip too, seeing an iceberg. It's not a big iceberg, but it is like an iconic Newfoundland thing. I'm not sure actually what the town was called. It wasn't really much of a town. It was just a very small settlement on the way back from Bonavista. It might have been called Plate Cove or one of these ones, like in that area. Open Hall, maybe. Actually, I think it was Open Hall. Yeah, so it's just on one of the routes back from Bonavista. It was only like 10 minutes out of the way, but yeah, highly worth visiting. This is in Gander, which is where I stayed that night. Gander is very well known for Air Force and their airport. During 9/11, it's one of the places where planes that were supposed to fly to the US had to be grounded, and like Gander is quite a small town, but they took in a lot of people and like housed them and fed them until they could go back to the US. So this is some type of air museum, but it was closed, but they had the planes outside that you could see at any time, even if the museum was closed. So again, I slept in my car here in Gander, and then the next day I drove up to Twillingate, which is another place where it's possible to see icebergs, but I knew there wasn't going to be icebergs here because I had looked online, but I went anyway because it was a very nice place. I'm happy I went there. This is the lighthouse there. So Twillingate's an island, and the town is like kind of right in the middle of the island, and then up at the northernmost point is where this lighthouse is, so you have some nice scenery. And then the town itself is interesting too. It's like that iconic Newfoundland thing with the rocky landscape and the like fishing village type of look. And then this is a bit farther west. This is in Springdale, which is getting closer to like Corner Brook in that area. It's about 10 or 15 minutes off of the highway. This is called Glassy Beach, which honestly the beach wasn't that impressive to me. It was the view from the beach which was what made it worth going. It's kind of a weird place. So you go through the town of Springdale, and then the road, it's like a dirt road, and then there's this weird little pullover that could maybe fit 2 or 3 cars. And then you just hike down, maybe like, I don't know, 5-minute walk or less down to the beach. And then the next day I stayed in a hotel in Deer Lake. And then I went up to Grossmore National Park. So this is called Western Brook Pond. I'd highly recommend visiting there as well. It's very impressive. You can take a boat that goes up the fjord, but I didn't do that. But even if you don't take the boat, it's still worth it. This is the view from the parking lot of the trail, which even if you don't want to do the hike, I'd highly recommend just visiting here and seeing this. This is about 5 minutes into the walk. You get this view, and then this is from the end of the hike, which is like it took me about 20 minutes. I think it's like 3 kilometers or something. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, you can take these boats, as I said earlier, but it's just very nice scenery. It's too bad it wasn't that clear, so I couldn't see that far up the fjord. But yeah, Grossmorn is a very nice park. And then this was called Lobster Point or Lobster Cove or something like that. It was near Norris Point or near Rocky Harbor. Yeah, it's Lobster Cove Lighthouse. And then this was in Norris Point. Here it honestly didn't look that much different than the west coast to me, whereas the eastern parts of Newfoundland looked completely way different to me, way different than anything I had seen. This was a bit more familiar to me though. And then this is Deer Lake, which the whole drive from Deer Lake to Corner Brook, which is like I think about an hour or 45 minutes or something. It was very nice. You're along these lakes the whole time with mountains. So I think I should say, like, the drive through Newfoundland, most of it was quite interesting along the highway, Trans-Canada Highway. But to really get the good scenery, you have to leave the highway, because other than this part from Corner Brook to Deer Lake, the highway is not really representative of a lot of Newfoundland. It's not that it's boring, but it's not as interesting as especially the coastal areas. So that brings us into the next part of the trip, which was the Maritimes. I know this video has kind of been weird. I'm kind of all over the place because I don't really have a script. I thought it would be more interesting or authentic if I didn't script this, but that also means it's a bit less organized, obviously. But anyway, after I took the ferry into Sydney, which again, I took the daytime ferry because I couldn't find a room on the overnight ferry. And so you can get reserved seats, but you're in this room with a bunch of other people. And I don't know, I just was more comfortable with my own room because it is like a 7-hour sailing. So I just stayed in just outside of Port aux Basques. I slept in my car, took the ferry into Sydney, and then in Sydney I walked around. This is the Big Fiddle again. This flavor on the water, by the way, is where I had that lobster that I had the picture of earlier. So again, Sydney, like I described a lot of these maritime towns, it's not necessarily the most interesting place, but it is nice. I think there's about 100,000 people in that area. So Sydney, I slept in the car again in actually North Sydney, and then I did the Cabot Trail again, so with better weather this time. This is that iconic photo again. I think I already included a photo of this same location earlier, but with worse weather. As you can see though, as I said, like when you zoom in, the quality isn't that great on the phone. This is in Chetty Camp again, where I had that donair. It's called Wabos, I believe it was called. It was good both times I had it. So this is donair poutine. I believe the first of many times I had poutine on this trip. Yeah, highly recommend it. It was just a nice setting as well, being on the lake there, or on the coast there, I mean. This is in Halifax, so I got to Halifax like around 5 o'clock or something, which was something I really liked about the Maritimes, is just how close everything was. So like I started the day in Sydney, did the Cabot Trail, which takes like 3 hours or 4 hours, and then I was in Halifax that evening. So yeah, just walked around the city. Again, it's a nice city. It's interesting being near the waterfront. It's a bit more like gritty, kind of a bit. There's some buildings that are more rundown than the rest of the Maritimes. Obviously, it's a lot bigger than anything else in the Maritimes. I believe they have about 400,000 people. But yeah, just some interesting architecture though. I'd recommend going there if you're going to Newfoundland. I would say definitely go down another hour to get to Halifax. So this is the Citadel, which I didn't actually go to because I didn't really have or I think it was closed by the time I got there in the evening, and I didn't really want to spend the money on it. But yeah, it's a cool building. I really like this building at the foot of the hill. This is just the harbor from Halifax. The waterfront was an interesting walk. If you had to walk in Halifax, I'd recommend taking the waterfront at least one way, and then maybe Barrington Street or Water Street on the other, going the other way. The downtown's, again, old buildings, so if you're from the east and you're used to old buildings, then yeah, just walk along the waterfront. If you're from the west and you're not as used to seeing these nice old buildings, then maybe spend more time walking around downtown. Yeah, so they had these buildings. They kind of are like the Lionsgate Bridge in Vancouver, the same type of thing with these two green towers. So you have to pay, I believe it's $1.25 if you pay in cash. It's just one of those old things where you throw the coins into the pot and then it opens the gate for you. Or you could pay with the like transponder thing, and I think it's $1, but you have to get one of those things somehow. I don't know. By the way, the only two tolls I had to pay on the trip were in Nova Scotia. There's the Quebec Pass, which was in northern Nova Scotia on the freeway, which is $4, and then this one, which I only took once, which was $1.25. Yeah, so Pier 21, this is in Halifax. I believe it's like, or was kind of like the Canadian version of Ellis Island, where immigrants would like check in or whatever. They have their like go through the immigration process once they got to Canada, and now it's been converted into a museum of immigration. Honestly, one of the most underwhelming legislative buildings in the country. This is in Halifax, the Nova Scotia Legislature. Not that interesting. Well, like, it's a nice building, but yeah, it's pretty small. You can't really get a good photo of it because there's not really any plaza in front, and then the street's pretty narrow. So this is from across the street. And then walking around Halifax, I went to this street called, honestly don't even remember what it's called, Market Street, I think, or Grafton Street. One of the two. I believe it's Grafton Street, actually. So it's closed to traffic, and they had these restaurants. But I went there on, I think it was a Wednesday night, so it wasn't that lively, really. And then this is probably like one of the most iconic places in Nova Scotia, Peggy's Cove. So it's about half an hour to 45 minutes out of Halifax, but the drive there is very nice. You're going through like a lot of those like coastal landscapes similar to Cabot Trail. But it's a bit more urban and built, not urban, but a bit more built up. There's more houses and stuff along this route when compared to Cabot Trail. Yeah, so not only is the lighthouse impressive, but it's kind of fun walking around on all these rocks. But I would just caution you to be careful of where you step, because there's not any marked trails or anything. You just walk wherever you want on the rocks. So just make sure when you go down a big steep like jump or something that you can actually get back up, because some of the these creases are pretty deep, so you don't want to get stuck. The town itself is pretty nice. I believe there's some type of like regulations where they limit how many buildings can be built and how many people can live there. So it's a very small town, but it's kind of artificially kept that way. But Lunenburg, on the other hand, which is where this is kind of a more normal town. I don't know how big it is. I think there's a few thousand people at least. So it's a bit more of a regular town, whereas Peggy's Cove is kind of more of just a tourist attraction. Obviously Lunenburg is a tourist attraction as well, but it's yeah, they have just over 2,000 people, but it feels a lot bigger than 2,000 people just because the built up commercial area is pretty big. So I spent a lot of time walking around Lunenburg. If you're interested in old churches, it's really good for that. I ate at this place in Lunenburg. It wasn't that great. This was my second time having lobster on the trip. yeah, it's like $25 or something. Not much lobster. There's a lot of like other stuff, lettuce and stuff in the lobster roll though. Um, so yeah, Lunenburg, very nice town. I'd highly recommend going there as well. Uh, Even though it's a lot farther south than Halifax, it's actually about the same amount of time to get there from Halifax because it's on the freeway most of the way. But I'd recommend visiting both Lunenburg and Peggy's Cove. Um, yeah, so it's just a nice coastal fishing town. So this is back in Halifax. I drove uh, to Dalhousie. Got free parking somehow across the street from the university, which is pretty foreign to me for as someone from Vancouver. But um, yeah, it's a nice campus. I didn't spend too much time walking around there because the parking spot was only an hour maximum. By the way, I slept in just north of Halifax at Walmart the night before. So yeah, if you're curious about the sleeping, I'll go more in depth into that later. But Walmart generally allows people to sleep in their cars or campers in the parking lot. Yeah, so this is from the Citadel, so you get a good view from up there. Again, I didn't actually go into the Citadel. I didn't want to pay, so I just drove up around it. And you're not really supposed to park here. I think it was a loading zone, so I just took the photo from my car quickly and then took off. This is again the Legislature Building. In the daytime, it's I don't know. It's a nice building, but it's not. I don't know. To me, it's not. You would think it's a courthouse or something. It doesn't look like a legislature building. Um, I'm just curious because most provinces, like you generally have protests and events and stuff in the front of the legislature building, but obviously there's no room to do that here. So I wonder how that works. Again, the harbor, I walked along the harbor again, or the waterfront, because I realized that I didn't do the whole thing the night before, so I went a bit farther north this time. There's a casino there, and there's a lot of docks and stuff. I'm not sure if it's actually a military base, but yeah, there's like shipyards and stuff. And then this is Dave's Lobster. It was on the waterfront as well. There's an interesting place. I didn't include any photos, but there's like a lot of like food carts and stuff, food truck type things. So I'd highly recommend this place. It was quite expensive though. This was about $25 for just this little lobster grilled cheese. It wasn't that big. There you can see my hand, so that's the closest you'll ever get to a face reveal on this channel. And this was probably one of the bigger disappointments of the trip. So I had stayed, or that night I went to Charlottetown, across the Confederation Bridge into PEI. So PEI was the last province I had to visit. So after visiting PEI, I'd been to all 10 provinces, and I just stayed in Walmart again in Charlottetown. And then the next day I went to the Legislature Building, which is very historically important because it's where a lot of the Canadian Confederation was created pretty much. But yeah, the building was just completely under scaffolding. They're doing like a very long-term construction project. And then they had some nice churches in Charlottetown as well. But again, it's not the most interesting place, but it's pleasant. It has some nice old buildings. The waterfront was also nice. This is, I believe that's Stratford across the harbor here. Yeah, so this is just a street scene. So yeah, some old buildings. It's quite a clean city. But again, it's not that interesting, but it's not bad either. So this was PEI National Park, which is on the north side of the island. It's just a very nice long beach. Depending on where you're from, this might not be that interesting to you. Like as someone from BC, I see beaches quite often, so it's not, the beach itself isn't that impressive, but what makes it more interesting is the sand dune here. So as you can see, there's the fence or this like rope thing, so you're not allowed to actually walk on the sand dune. Where I'm standing, it's like a pathway that goes across it to access the beach, but you can walk wherever you want on the beach. So then this is Cavendish Beach, which is also part of the national park, but I think it's detached from the rest of it. At least by car, you have to leave the park and then come back. Cavendish is kind of a big tourist trap type thing. There's a lot of like amusement parks and mini golf and that type of thing. Also, the Anne of Green Gables house is there. But yeah, this is I think the dunes here were a bit bigger than at the rest of the park, so I thought this was quite impressive. Um, and then this, I honestly don't really remember where this was. It was just this random beach. Like there was a sign pointing to a viewpoint, and I wasn't even going to stop there, but luckily I did because honestly, this was probably one of the best uh, places for scenery that I saw in PEI. Yeah, I don't really remember where it was, unfortunately. Um, it was just west of Cavendish, though. Uh, Maybe it was called Swimming Rock, according to Google, is what it says for the viewpoint, but I'm not sure. So this was Summerside again. It's not that interesting, but it's pleasant. It's relatively clean, although there were a few more vacant businesses here than Charlottetown, but it was a nice town. And then this was this kind of an interesting little shopping area. I ended up eating there, and there's like tourist shops and like kind of weird little shops, but this I don't know. I really like this pond type thing or inlet where some of the buildings were on the like a wharf or pier type of thing on top of it. And then there's my car. Basically, I drove on some muddy dirt roads after it had rained because it rained most of the time, as in PEI, unfortunately. And yeah, my car got really muddy, which I was happy about because PEI has this really weird dirt color, which you can kind of see in this photo, but it's kind of like a red almost color of dirt. Yeah, so again, this is just where I ate in Summerside. So after Summerside, I just went back to the bridge. So there's this little viewpoint in Borden Carleton, which is a town right on the PEI side of the bridge. There's this park with a nice view of the bridge. It's quite impressive driving over it just because of how long the bridge is and how long it takes. I think it was like 15 or 20 minutes. If the weather's good, you can always see both sides of the bridge, but it's just kind of a weird feeling to be driving. It's not a straight line, but just to be driving in like with no intersections or anything or any exits for so long, and uh like yeah, just to be over the water, it's kind of weird. Anyway, so this is Moncton, which is actually a nicer town than I was expecting. I didn't really know anything about Moncton before. uh it's not some of it's kind of rough. If you go a little bit north of downtown, there's a lot of homeless and stuff, and it's kind of run down, but this part downtown was pretty nice. I think I was there on a Friday, so there's some stuff going on, restaurants and bars and stuff. This is kind of a weird tower. It's just a bell, like I don't know if it's for like TV towers or whatever, but it's kind of a weird building. It really stands out because there's not really any tall buildings there other than this thing. Yeah, so this is just a street scene. I walked around a bit of downtown Moncton. This is the tidal bore viewing thing. I missed the tidal bore by probably just a few minutes the next morning, unfortunately. But basically, it's where the river, because the Bay of Fundy has such big tides. Normally, the river should be flowing into the Bay of Fundy, but then when it gets to be high tide, the Bay of Fundy water kind of pushes the river water backwards, so the river flows backwards while it's at high tide. So the interesting time to see it is when those two opposing forces are kind of meeting each other. But yeah, you can view the schedule online. It was a bit off, so you're supposed to arrive like 15 to 20 minutes before, and I only arrived like 10 minutes before, so I missed it. And then this is probably one of the highlights of the trip, Hopewell Rocks. It's about half an hour south of Moncton, I think. I first went at high tide, and yeah, so as you can see, you can kayak around. But yeah, this is from the bottom of the stairs. So there's stairs that go down, and then there's a beach at the bottom. And at high tide, like I was there like 10 minutes before the highest tide, and you could still kind of walk on the beach, but only like 8 people could fit or so. And then just a few minutes before the highest tide, they actually closed off the beach, so you could only go to the bottom of the stairs. And then yeah, so I went back into Moncton for a few hours because it's like 6 hours until high tide. And then I came back, or low tide, sorry, came back during low tide, and this is a difference. So if you look at these two photos, they're not at the exact angle, but you can see like this, how this part of the rock it's just this little notch that's there, and then here's, so it's probably like around up to here or something that the water went, and then you can see way over here it's still dry land now. So this area is pretty like dry, like because it's been it hasn't been underwater for a few hours, so you can walk around here just fine. You don't have to worry about getting your shoes dirty or anything. But there are some parts, as you can see here, that are kind of mucky. So this is just the back of the stairs that you take to get down. I didn't really get any good photos of it. I should have done that, but I didn't think of doing it. So yeah, you can really walk out quite a ways and still be on land, although it is quite mucky. Yeah, so then I drove to St. John, which I was just expecting just to drive around St. John quickly and then get out of there and find somewhere to sleep. But St. John was another one of my favorite cities in Canada. I would say also top 5. It's just very historic old buildings. I was expecting a really like gritty port town with a lot of like really rundown buildings and stuff. Some of the buildings were not really that well maintained, but a lot of them were, and it's quite interesting. Just downtown, I don't know, I just really like the old architecture that they had there. So I was there during the Memorial Cup. St. John was hosting, but they were also playing in this game. I heard that was kind of a weird situation. They ended up winning, but they were only in it because they were hosting it. Anyway, but let's not get into that. But it was quite an interesting atmosphere, though, that gave it. I wasn't expecting, like I didn't know that it was on. I didn't know they were hosting it because I don't really pay attention to the CHL because I don't know, like it seemed really popular there. I guess it's because I'm from a city with an NHL team, so we don't really pay attention to CHL as much. But yeah, it's just an interesting city. A lot of old architecture. I think it's one of the oldest cities in Canada. So I walked quite a bit around downtown along the waterfront and then through the downtown. So yeah, it is a port city as well, so you have some industrial stuff along the water and a lot of boats and stuff. But yeah, it's just a nice city. A lot of restaurants and bars and stuff. I'm not sure how much of that was just because of the Memorial Cup. I don't know if the atmosphere would be the same on just a regular, I believe it was a Saturday night. But yeah, this is Carlton Martello Tower. It's just outside of St. John. I got there after closing, but you can walk around for free, I think, unless if I don't think I snuck in. There was no gates or anything. But yeah, you can walk up it, I believe, but you have to pay. But it's not that tall. Honestly, I don't know if it's really worth going up it. You do get a bit of a view of St. John from there. But this was from Fort Howe, which is just across the freeway from downtown. It's up on a hill, so you get a nice view of the city. This was the nighttime photo, and then this was a daytime photo from the same place. So again, the city feels a lot bigger than it actually is. I think it's around 100,000 people in the metro area, maybe a bit bigger. But it is quite old, and it's been, I think it used to be the biggest city in New Brunswick, but now Moncton is. But yeah, really nice city. Highly recommend going there, and I'd like to go back there again in the future. That takes us to Fredericton. By the way, I slept in St. John again at Walmart. And then, yeah, Fredericton was, I don't know, it's not that interesting really. Again, one of those cities that's nice, but not too interesting. Like there's some interesting old buildings, but it was quite hot that day. And I'd walked a lot around Moncton and St. John the days before, so I didn't really want to walk too much. So I got out of the car a few times, took some photos of these old buildings, and they had a nice waterfront actually, or riverfront, along this parkway here. And then they had their government house, which was just west of Fredericton. I actually wasn't even going there on purpose. I just happened to drive by it, and they had some type of garden party thing for the Queen's Jubilee. Yeah, so, and then this was just north of Fredericton. It's in Nakawik. It's the world's largest axe. So again, one of those weird like roadside attraction type things. You had to drive a little bit off of the freeway, but it was maybe 5 minutes or something, so not really that far out of the way. And then Heartland, New Brunswick, again, maybe about 5 minutes off of the freeway, but it was the world's longest covered bridge. So it's a one-lane bridge. The signs technically say you're supposed to stop and, like, I guess yield to oncoming traffic, but in practice you just follow people onto the bridge, and then when you arrive there, if there's people already in the bridge going the other way, you just wait for them to leave. And I don't know, it seemed to work out pretty well. I was kind of concerned about that at first just because of how long the bridge is, that I thought there might be some problems there with people not yielding to each other, but it seemed fine when I was there. So yeah, this is the bridge from the outside. Honestly, don't know how necessary it is, but it's interesting nonetheless. Okay, so this is going to be the fourth section of the trip. It's kind of arbitrary sections, I know, but basically I did like the route east and then Newfoundland and then Maritimes and then Quebec and Ontario. So I've just realized that I've been recording for almost an hour already, so I'm probably going to end up doing two videos. One just a very long, detailed one that I'm doing now, and then I'll do a condensed version, but I'll probably upload the condensed version first. Anyway, so let's continue here. This is Quebec City, probably my favorite city in Canada, at least to visit. It's just extremely unique. Maybe if you're from Europe or you have been to Europe, maybe it won't be as interesting, because a lot of the reason why I like Quebec City is just because of the history and the age of the buildings and stuff. But it's also very clean, and it's just nice. It's a nice city. Yeah, so this is the Chateau Frontenac. Basically, I parked along the river, which is like at sea level pretty much, and then you have this big cliff. So there's a few different options to get up the cliff. You can either take this tram type of thing, but you have to pay for it. I'm not actually sure how much it cost, because I wasn't going to do it anyway. Or you could take some stairs up, or you can just take the road, which is a lot longer than the stairs, but it's a more gradual slope. Yeah, so this is the Notre Dame des... I know I'm not pronouncing it right, but Notre Dame de Victory, something like that, Victoire, which is... I think this is called Place Royal Royal Plaza. I don't know how to pronounce these French things. Actually, visiting Quebec really made me want to learn French, but obviously that's a long way to go considering how I pronounced the name of the church and the plaza there. Anyway, yeah, so this is still at the bottom of the hill, so it's not within the walled city, I don't think. But this is Notre Dame Street. I really like this mural because in person it was obvious that it was a mural, but when I first saw the photo, it almost fooled me because it looks like it's a separate street, really. They had a few of these throughout Quebec City. Yeah, so this is just a normal street scene. So this area wasn't as lively as some other parts, but it was still really interesting with these old buildings. So this is where I was saying you could take the stairs. So actually you have to take this part of the road, but just after this archway, there's stairs that go right up to the Chateau Frontenac, or you can just continue along this road farther. And then to the left of where this is taken, there's stairs that go down, because this is like halfway up the cliff, kind of. So this is up at the top of the stairs of Chateau Frontenac. Very beautiful building. I was surprised how big it was. It's not really that tall, but it's wide. And then just being right at the edge of the cliff pretty much makes it look a lot bigger when you're at the bottom of the cliff. And then walked through Quebec City, the walled city, a bit, and then got to the Legislature Building, which they call it a National Assembly because, you know, it's Quebec. But they have this nice fountain. One of my favorite provincial capitals, or buildings at least, they had all these like interesting statues too throughout these like archway things, which was quite interesting. I actually didn't notice those until I looked at the photos when I got home. But yeah, obviously it's a French style, being Quebec. But yeah, very impressive building. This is one of the entrances or passageways through the walled city. So I was really confused about how the wall worked, but I think the Legislature Building is outside of the walled city in the newer part, and then this is just I think this is from inside the walled city looking out towards the legislature. So this is the next day. This is up near the Citadel, between the Citadel and the Plains of Abraham. This is the more modern downtown. So they don't really have that like that much of a skyline in terms of like one downtown where there's a lot of tall buildings in one area. You have just a few of these ones, and then it's kind of stretched out along one of the major streets as you go west from this. That's where like the newer office buildings are. So this is the Citadel. I didn't go here either, but I walked around it. I just thought it was kind of interesting how you had like this submerged area where you could drive or walk around or whatever. According to the signs, this is like Governor General lives there, which I didn't know. I thought she lived in Rideau Hall in Ottawa, but apparently she lives there. Maybe she has multiple homes. But yeah, this is Plains of Abraham, which I didn't spend too much time at. Again, I think you had to pay for parking here, and I didn't want to pay, so I just parked my car there and quickly ran across the street to take some photos. And then here I went back into Quebec City. By the way, again, I think, no, I didn't sleep at Walmart this time. I slept at a Petro-Canada or something in Lévis the night before, and then went back into Quebec City. So this is just another nice street scene. I don't know what that guy's doing there with his ear, but yeah. So this is one of the staircases that you can take to go up partway, like halfway up the cliff. It's kind of an awkward city to get around at some points, just because of the like half the stuff that's worth seeing is at the bottom of the cliff and the other half is up at the top of the cliff. So yeah, you will have to walk up a lot of hills unless you want to pay for that tram thing. So this is at the top of the staircase. So this part you have to walk along this road, but behind me you can, like behind where this photo is taken, you can take a road that goes down to avoid the stairs that were in the last photo. Or you can just take those stairs, which I believe the stairs lead to Champlain Street, which is one of the more famous streets there. So then this is up at, from this thing, you could see this thing at the right. I don't know what it's actually called. I better look that up. Montmorency Park, I think. I don't know how to pronounce it, but yeah, so this is just the view from there looking west at the, actually it's more southwest, but at the Chateau Frontenac. There's that mural I was talking about earlier, and then this is just the view to Lévis. So I just walked around Quebec City quite a bit. It's kind of hard to like pinpoint exactly where I was because I was pretty confused and I was just going all over the place just looking at the buildings and stuff. But yeah, very impressive city. So this is just along Dufferin Terrace, which just goes along the side of the cliff, kind of, or the edge of the cliff. I don't know if they call it a cliff, but whatever, that's what I'm calling it. And then I went back to the Legislature Building. They're doing some construction on it, so I couldn't get the same angle as I got the previous night with the fountain in front. But yeah, it was really nice. And then this building it's just an office building, but it was built in the 30s, I believe. It's near the city hall. It's quite interesting. It's not like the bottom half, I wouldn't say is that interesting, but I really like the roof. So basically when you look at Quebec City from the southeast or the east, you'll see this building and the Chateau Frontenac. They're very prominent. So this, unfortunately, there's a lot of construction at a lot of these nice old churches. So this, I believe, was the Notre Dame du Quebec Basilica, which is just a couple blocks north of the Chateau Frontenac. Yeah, so basically I left Quebec City and I drove through Trois-Rivières, which wasn't that spectacular really, and I got to Montreal just as it was getting dark. So my first stop was the Olympic Stadium. Again, a lot of construction going on, and I didn't want to spend too much time there, so I didn't get that great of a photo, but it is a very interesting building though. And then that night I had poutine at Poutineville, which, if you watch Geography King on YouTube, who mainly makes more American geography videos, but I don't remember which video he mentioned this place, but I went there because he suggested it. Even though he's not a local, I figured I'd just take his word for it that it was good. And it was good. I think he mentioned in one of his videos that they pretty much give you this big checklist of all the items that you want on it, so it's very customizable. So I got Montreal smoked meat on it, which I don't think is really a traditional poutine topping, but I figured just get the two stereotypical Montreal dishes all together as one. So that night I kind of walked around Montreal a bit, and honestly I wasn't that impressed. I think I was in the wrong spot though, because I just looked up what part of Montreal would be busy, and it said St. Lawrence Street, which is where I walked, and it's pretty run down and kind of dirty and weird. So I spent about an hour doing that. Wasn't too impressed. But don't worry, because next day when I went back to Montreal, I was very impressed. I really liked Montreal. Yeah, so I stayed at a Walmart on the other side in, don't even remember where it was, somewhere near Longueuil, however you pronounce it. Or Brossard actually was closer. No, it was actually Candiac was the place that I stayed. But anyway, went back into Montreal. First stop was Mont Royal. You get a good view. Their skyline's decent. It's not that great, but it's nice. I kind of like how you have the mountains off in the distance as well. And then I went to the church, the basilica that was, I think it's on the west side of Mont Royal, southwest side at St. Joseph's Oratory, but unfortunately they were doing construction, so you couldn't walk right up to it, so I walked along the side and I went inside the building, and it's very impressive. It's a huge church. As you can see, the nice organs there and everything, and then this is the view from the front. But yeah, the construction kind of ruins the view a bit, but the building itself is still clearly visible, so yeah, it's really nice. So then it was kind of annoying because I went to downtown, I was looking for parking, and I finally found a parking spot, but you can only pay for like 3 hours at a time or something in Montreal, so I didn't want to have to go back to the car to pay for more parking, so it was quite frustrating. It took me quite a while to finally find a parking spot. The traffic was bad. Google Maps isn't very good for finding parking garages because it doesn't know which road. Like, it knows where the garage is, kind of what block it's in, but it doesn't know what road you have to be on to access the entrance. So that was pretty frustrating, but eventually I found a parking spot on Sherbrooke Street near McGill. So first stop was McGill. I just walked around the campus a little bit. Some nice impressive buildings there. So this is just along Sherbrooke Street. I just walked along Sherbrooke to, I don't remember exactly what roads I walked along, but I went down Sherbrooke, and then I was looking for Crescent Street, but I missed it, so I had to go back and then walk down Crescent Street. This one, there's a fire at a building. Just put this in the slideshow just to give some context, because some of the photos later there's a bit of smoke, so this is why it was smoky. So that was like pretty much kitty corner to the Bell Center, where the Canadians play. Bell Center is kind of weird because it doesn't really look like an arena from most of the sides, except the northeast side kind of does, because you have this nice terrace where you have a list of everyone who played on the Canadians up until 2015. And then there's some nice statues, Rocket Richard and Guy Lafleur and a few others. So yeah, I didn't go to a game there. I went there in July, and obviously June, and obviously they were not in the playoffs. I think actually, ironically, the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup as I was in Quebec City, because I was kind of wondering, like, do people in Quebec City still care about the Avalanche, or do they hate the Avalanche? Because they used to be in Quebec, I believe, as the Nordiques. But anyway, my uncle went to a game here a few months before, and he said it was like the best atmosphere of any NHL game he'd been to. So yeah, so if you're in the area, I'd recommend trying to see a game if it's during hockey season. So this is why I put the photo of the fire in earlier, because it is kind of smoky here. That's not a normal, I don't think it's a normal Montreal thing, so the smoke is just because of that fire. It's not pollution or anything. This building I really like. I don't know what it is, but I like the triangular shape to it. It's quite iconic. You can see it from all over the place. Yeah, so I just walked down to Old Montreal, and then I walked along Notre Dame Street to towards the Notre Dame Basilica in Old Montreal. There's just a lot of interesting architecture here. Old Montreal is probably my favorite part of the city. It was the part that was most similar to Quebec City. And then this is the Notre Dame Basilica of Montreal. Unfortunately, again, construction. A lot of these nice places I wanted to see were under construction, but at least it was still mostly visible. It wasn't like the Charlottetown legislative building, which was completely covered by scaffolding. And then I ate at this really weird place. It was called Saint Burger. It was at St. Laurent Boulevard and Notre Dame Street in Old Montreal. So I didn't take many photos inside because there's a few other people there, but it's just a very weird place. But I got poutine there. I like this one better actually than the Poutineville that I had. By the way, the Poutineville, if you're interested, they have a location in Quebec City as well. But yeah, this is a very good meal. It's not that much food for, I don't remember how much it cost, but very good quality nonetheless. And then this is still in Old Montreal. I was a bit confused trying to figure out exactly where it was, but I think this is Notre Dame de Bonsecours, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which is a bit northeast of the other Notre Dame. And then right beside it, they had the Bonsecours Market. Quite an impressive building. At first I thought it was a church, but no, it's actually a big market, but it's quite a long building. And then this one, I'm not actually sure what it was either, but it was just a building I saw when I was going between Old Montreal and downtown. I think it's just an office building actually. And then I really thought this was interesting. They had a like an old church steeple, and then this is like a big hospital that's obviously quite new, but they kept the steeple. I don't know, just I like the contrast. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of like that Bank of Canada building in Ottawa. And then I walked along Saint Denis Street, or Saint Denis, I guess it's pronounced. I know I'm pronouncing all the Quebec things wrong, but obviously I don't speak French. I'm pretty bad at the pronunciations. So this street it was like a pedestrian only street for a few blocks and no cars. So you can just walk down the middle of the road. There's a lot of restaurants and stuff, and I like the architecture as well. And then this was just a nice church. It was, I think, along St. Catherine Street downtown. I'm not actually sure what this was called though. It may be the St. James United Church, but I'm not sure. Okay, I think I'll cut that part out, but I said Dorchester Square, but it's actually Phillips Square. This is where I ate. I ate across the street of this place called Pizza Il Focalao. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it's right across the street from Phillips Square. Highly recommend it. It's very good, just kind of expensive. Yeah, I'm sure if you look it up, you'll be able to find it, even if I pronounced it incorrectly. That's not a French pronunciation. That's an Italian name, I guess. And apparently I'm even worse with Italian as I am with French. Anyway, so I went back to the car. I walked around Montreal for like 7 hours or something. I think well over 10 kilometers. I think almost 15 kilometers I walked. And then I drove to the, this is from Expo, whenever that Expo, 1967 or something. It's the Biosphere. I didn't want to pay for parking again, so I just ran out quickly, get a few photos. I thought that it was like glass, but it's actually just these metal things, so like if it rains, everything inside gets wet. So I don't honestly know what the point of it is, but it's an interesting building nonetheless. And then a bit farther south is the Habitat 67, which is this interesting building. It was also built during Expo, I believe, or for Expo, but it's just an apartment building, but it has quite a iconic design just because of how weird it is. Yeah, so anyway, that's all for the Quebec photos. And then I stayed at En Route, which is like the like a rest area type thing in Ontario. They're very helpful because they have like gas stations, fast food, and everything. And I slept there twice and I didn't have any problems. So I'm not saying that I don't know if you're allowed to sleep there, but there's no signs telling you not to. Anyway, so after En Route, which was just into Ontario near the Quebec border, I went through Cornwall and then to Kingston. And Kingston, I wasn't really expecting much of Kingston, but it was a very nice town, some nice old buildings. Again, I had trouble finding parking, and I just wanted to get into Toronto, so I got like a free 15-minute parking spot, so I had to like rush around, run around the downtown to get some photos. That's the City Hall from the back, the other side. But yeah, it's a nice city. I'd recommend going there. I'd like to spend more time there. It's not really that far from Toronto. And then this was just a nice church near the City Hall. Next up was the Big Apple, which is in, I believe it's called Cobourg, Ontario, or Colborne, I mean, not Port Colborne, but just Colborne, which is somewhere a bit east of Oshawa, between Belleville and Oshawa, or between Belleville and Cobourg, actually, right on 401. You can't miss the Apple. So you can see that's a normal sized bench, so it's not a comically tiny bench, so it's a huge statue. They had a petting zoo. There's this donkey. They had, I think that's a miniature or a pony behind it. There's some alpacas and there's potbelly pigs in the background there. But yeah, it's an interesting place, good place for kids to visit for the most part, except when this donkey started humping this pony. But other than that, it's good for kids to visit. So then I just went into Toronto, drove through downtown down Don Valley Parkway right during rush hour, so it was pretty bad, but I was just excited to be in Toronto. I took Gardiner Expressway through downtown, and then I ended up in Mississauga at Square One, so I wanted to see these buildings anyway, so I just got out and took some photos while I was there. Then I went back into downtown. There's a Blue Jays game on, so some of the parking was expensive, but I managed to find one that was, I think, $15 for the rest of the night. Whereas right like half a block away, people were spending $30 for a parking spot with no in and out privileges, and mine you could come and go whenever you wanted because it was like you put in your license plate or whatever. But anyway, one thing I really liked about Toronto was just how you could see the CN Tower peeking out at all these random locations throughout downtown. Despite all the new tall buildings that they have, the CN Tower is just so tall that you can see it from quite a few places. So I walked along the waterfront for a bit, and then I went up Yonge Street, saw the Hockey Hall of Fame. I didn't go in, but I just walked past it. So I went up to Yonge and Dundas Square. This was somewhere near Yonge and Dundas Square. It's just an interesting old building. This is an iconic photo of Toronto, Yonge and Dundas Square. It's kind of like almost like Times Square with all the very bright billboards. There's a lot of people around, and it is very bright, so I don't know how much time you actually want to spend there, but it's quite impressive and interesting to see. A bit overwhelming, kind of. Especially I could see if you're driving straight to Toronto through northern Ontario and you're out in the middle of nowhere other than like Barrie and Sudbury and Thunder Bay and stuff, and then all of a sudden you get to Toronto and see this, it could be a bit overwhelming. But I was just in Montreal the day before, so it wasn't that much of a shock, really. I don't know, for some reason I like the streetcars. I didn't ride any public transit in Toronto, but the streetcars just look quite interesting, even though they're not really that like historic or old looking like the ones in San Francisco, but they're pretty cool nonetheless. This was kind of a weird statue or painting, I guess, of Van Gogh. So if you look at his eyes, and his whole face, it's pointed right at you when you're looking like directly in front of him, but then you go to the side and it seems like he's looking at you and has his head pointed towards you, and then the other side, same thing. So it's kind of weird. This was along Dundas Street, somewhere west, closer to Kensington Market. But yeah, so then this is art gallery. I didn't go in, I just thought the building was interesting, and I tried to get a photo with the CN Tower and the art gallery and the streetcar, but unfortunately the streetcar was kind of blurry because it was moving. As it gets dark, the camera's not as, or the phone is not as great, and you have to hold it still longer because I guess the shutter takes longer when it's darker. Yeah, so this was Kensington Market. I only went there at night. It's kind of a weird place. There's a lot of very strange people and businesses and stuff. It's a bit dirty, but it's, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. I wouldn't want to go that often, but it's, I don't know, I'd recommend going if you're if you're looking for something weird. Yeah, so this is just some weird art installation thing that they had in Kensington Market. Then I went up to the Legislative Building. So this is like University Street, I believe, or University Avenue, and then it becomes Queen's Park Crescent, and then Queen's Park is like right in the middle of, or it's like surrounded by Queen's Park Crescent, which is like one-way roads that go around it. So it's kind of interesting. Like it's right in the middle of the city, but it kind of feels a bit peaceful just because you have these big roads that aren't really that, or when I went there, they weren't that busy on either side of you, and then a lot of trees and stuff. So it's kind of like you're sheltered from the rest of the city for a few minutes, which is kind of interesting. It's kind of a weird building. I don't know how I feel about it, honestly. It's definitely interesting, but I don't know. I find these things kind of weird, the towers. And then I went to the Nathan Phillips Square, I believe it's called, which is in front of the City Hall. Unfortunately, it's kind of, as I said, it's kind of hard to take photos at night with the phone, but yeah, the iconic Toronto sign lit up with the City Hall in the background. And then I just walked around downtown a bit, and then I got to Rogers Center as the Blue Jays were finished losing. So that was kind of interesting with all the upset Blue Jays fans around. But the stadium was nice and lit up, and the CN Tower had interesting colors. I guess lit up in the Red Sox colors, who just beat the Blue Jays. I don't know why it's red. You'd think that they would keep it blue for the Blue Jays game, but whatever. Yeah, I don't know. I just really like the CN Tower. Obviously, I took tons of photos of it. It's just impressive how tall it is and just how unique it is. I don't know. I guess they have things like that in like Berlin and stuff, but for North America, it's very unique. And then this one was from the other side. I guess they decided to light it up in Blue Jays colors. This is from near where I parked, which is kind of interesting. I parked in this garage, and then you walk out, there's a bit of construction, but once you get out of the construction area, you turn around and this is what you see. Yeah, so if you're interested in parking there, I don't know how useful this information will be. It's down on Queens Quay Road, just east of Spadina. Yeah, it's I don't know, Google shows like Shoppers Drug Mart in the same building, but yeah, I'd recommend there's like $15 for 12 hours or something, or 10 hours. So the next day I stayed up at that en route again because I wanted to stay at Walmart, but apparently you couldn't sleep at a lot of Walmarts in Toronto, so I had to go way up north of Vaughan to the closest en route to sleep there. But then the next day I drove back into Toronto to go to Scarborough Bluffs, which was quite impressive. I wasn't really expecting something like this because Toronto is relatively flat, but you do have these. It's like Quebec City too, where you have this like cliff type of thing. Yeah, so that was nice. And then I went to Toronto Island, so I parked at the same place again, $15 for 10 hours. Took the ferry, and I think the ferry is about $12 for both ways. Like you get in the terminal, you get three options. You either take the one to the west part of the island, which has the airport, or the center part, which I think has a amusement park, but it looked pretty busy, so I took the one to the eastern part, which had a nice unobstructed view, because I think the central part, from the photos I saw earlier, it looked like it was the view was a bit obstructed at the sides because you're in this little like cove type of thing. But yeah, this was an interesting area. I walked around the island a bit. There's a beach on the other side, but I don't think I got any photos of that. This is just from the boat coming back. I was afraid I'd drop my phone into the lake, so I didn't really take very many photos, or very good photos here. I didn't want to stick my phone out through the railing. So yeah, I walked around downtown Toronto again. Over like one night, and then this day I walked over 30 kilometers through Toronto, so I saw quite a bit of the downtown at least. So first stop was the place where the Maple Leafs like to lose and the Raptors play. It's pretty much like 3 blocks east, I think, of the CN Tower. It's kind of a weird building, but again, to me, it doesn't really look like an arena. It looks more like a convention center, but yeah, it's an interesting area nonetheless. Walked over the CN Tower again. I took a lot of photos of this, of like just from the bottom of the tower. I don't know, it's just a cool building. Then I walked up I don't know what street I walked up actually, Bay Street maybe, up to the old City Hall. Yeah, I think it was Bay Street. I was happy I was able to get a photo of the whole thing because I was having trouble with that when I went there the night before. Then went back to the new City Hall. I walked back up to the Legislature Building, up University Avenue, and then I walked way up to Bloor Street, and then I went east to what used to be Maple Leaf Gardens. I believe now it's part of Ryerson University. Actually, it's on a bit farther south, Carleton Street, but I went up to Bloor and then back down Yonge Street. So I don't know. Another impressive thing about Toronto to me was just how I could walk like 5 kilometers or something in one direction and still be in downtown. But anyway, this is where the Maple Leafs used to play when they were actually successful. It's some type of rec center or something now as part of Mattamy Athletic Center. I think it's part of Ryerson. And then this is just along actually Adelaide Street. I think it's honestly I forget the name, Roy Thomson Hall. It's kind of an iconic building. This was getting towards the end of my walk. I was extremely tired at this point. I had just pretty much every day for the last week I'd been walking at least a few hours every day around a lot of these cities, so I was just so tired by this point. This is I think the Blue Jays game had already started, but this was just like, this is the Rogers Center off to the right, so still a very busy area. CN Tower and Rogers Center and aquarium being there just makes it quite a lively area, I guess. See, there's quite a long line, and from what I remember, when I went to the CN Tower before, like, you lined up inside, so I'm not sure if there's still a lineup inside in addition to this lineup, because I didn't bother going up, because even I didn't want to spend the money firstly, but just the time that it would take to line up, I didn't want to deal with that, waste time when I'm in Toronto. So then I ended up staying in St. Catharines at Walmart, and then I went down to Niagara Falls. I'm sure everyone's seen Niagara Falls. This is the American Falls. This is the Canadian Falls, Horseshoe Falls. I guess it's not the Canadian Falls because the border goes through it, but and then I went up to Clifton Hill after, which is one of those very tacky tourist type things, but I don't know, it's kind of interesting to look at. I wouldn't want to spend much time there. I think I'd get tired of it, but you have some interesting signs like that. And yeah, it's just very busy though. I went on Canada Day, by the way, so yeah, a lot of places I went were busy. After this, I went up to Niagara on the Lake, but I just drove through it because it was just so busy. I couldn't find parking or anything. And then I went to St. Catharines after. This is the Whirlpool Rapids, I believe it's called. It's just a bit north of Niagara Falls along the river. It's kind of an interesting canyon. Like, again, it's kind of a flat landscape for the most part, and then you get this like gorge canyon type thing. It's just Niagara Whirlpool, I guess is the name. But so this is New York on this side of the river. So you take this, or you can, I didn't do it, but you take this like gondola thing. This is, both sides are Canadian. This is just this little like cove type thing of the river. But yeah, you can take that thing across the river. So I went through St. Catharines, as I said, and then through Toronto again, but I didn't really stop. And then I went up to Barrie, which is where I got out, looked at the lake a bit, because there was some Canada Day stuff going on, but I wanted to get a bit farther north. But Barrie was actually a lot nicer than I thought. I didn't really have any impression of the city to begin with. It's just like I knew it existed, but I didn't really think anything bad or good about it. But yeah, it was pretty nice with Lake Simcoe there. So I ended up staying in Parry Sound that night. I wanted to see the Bobby Orr statue, but you had to pay for the museum. It was like $15 or something just to see the statue. Well, there's more than just a statue, but to be able to see it, you had to pay for the museum. So, so it was quite busy when I got there at Canada Day. So I just went to Walmart and slept. And then the next morning, I went back to it's like this weird like point thing that sticks out into the lake. or into the, I guess it's like an inlet of the Georgian Bay. But yeah, it's an interesting city or town. It's not that big, but yeah. So then I went up to Sudbury, saw the world's biggest nickel. Sudbury is kind of rough. It's not that nice of a town. I forgot to mention that before Barrie, I went through Hamilton too, and honestly, Hamilton's probably one of the worst looking cities that I've been to in Canada. Just a lot of vacant and abandoned buildings, and yeah, just wasn't that nice. I wasn't expecting it to be that nice, but I wasn't expecting it to be as bad looking as it was. Yeah, so that was Sudbury, and then that will take us into the next part. I don't know why I broke it up at Sudbury, but just I guess for because I wanted to show the previous route there in Toronto a bit more zoomed in, or Southern Ontario a bit more. So we're getting close to the end. So after Sudbury, this was in Echo Bay. It's a big loonie. I assume they're kind of copying the Big Nickel in Sudbury. So the road along, this is Highway 17, so it's along Lake Superior. To Sault Ste. Marie, it's not that interesting, but after Sault Ste. Marie, it's really nice. You go along Lake Superior. These are the locks in Sault Ste. Marie. Sault Ste. Marie is kind of rough. It's not that nice or anything, but they do have the river here. This is in Wawa, Ontario. This is a bit north, a couple hours north of Sault Ste. Marie. It's a big, world's largest Canada goose. I believe this is also very close to the halfway point in the Trans-Canada Highway. And then this is in White River, which is where I stayed. I just slept at a visitor information center while they were closed. And then they had the Winnie the Pooh statue, because I think this is where Winnie the Pooh was from or something. I don't remember the actual story. But yeah, this is a cute statue. I really like these like weird roadside attractions in Northern Ontario. Actually, all through the prairies they had them as well. Yeah, so this is just an example of nice views you get from the highway. There's a lot of times though there's not really any rest or like pullover places to stop to take photos or whatever, but you do get them occasionally. So yeah, and I don't know, just as someone from the West, or from BC, I never really think of Northern Ontario as being this mountainous. So yeah, it's quite impressive. And then I went back to Thunder Bay. This is the Terry Fox Memorial again. I think there's a photo of that earlier when I was going east. But you get a nice view. So you got, I believe this is called Pie Island. And then this is called the Sleeping Giant. It's a provincial park. I guess this is supposed to be his head over to the left, and then his arms and his legs. But yeah, so then I went into Thunder Bay. So Thunder Bay is kind of interesting because it used to be two cities. It was Port Arthur at the north and then Fort William at the south, and then they amalgamated, I think, in the 60s or something. So this is, so they still have like two downtowns. So this is the north one. This is what used to be Port Arthur. I believe that's the order that they go, at least. But so the Port Arthur downtown was pretty nice. There's some restaurants and stuff, quite a few people around. There's a nice waterfront. But then, oh shit, sorry you had to see that. I'll talk about that later. But then the Fort William downtown of Thunder Bay was pretty rough. Most of it was vacant businesses. There's a lot of homeless people around. A lot of people seemed like they were on drugs and stuff. So Thunder Bay kind of was an interesting place just because like half of it was nice, half of it was pretty rough. Anyway, so this one, extremely weird statue. This is in Vermilion Bay, which is east of Kenora, between Kenora and Dryden. I don't know, just some like auto part business or something had this in front of their place. I don't know, it was extremely weird, but anyway. So Kenora had a nice lakefront. The town, some of it was kind of rough, run down, but the waterfront was pretty nice. Then they had this Husky, the Muskie, which is just another roadside attraction. You got a nice view of the lake from the statue as well. So that brings us back to Manitoba. This is the longitudinal center of Canada, just a little bit east of Winnipeg along Trans-Canada Highway. This one, Winnipeg Zoo, is probably one of the highlights of the trip, the polar bears. So yeah, I'd highly recommend visiting here. I know some people are opposed to zoos, but from what I was told, the polar bears are all rescued because like they were orphaned, so they wouldn't be able to survive on their own in the wild. But yeah, you had this acrylic tube type thing that you walked through, and they were sometimes playing up on the top of it. They also had a nice outdoor viewing area where you could see them walking around. But yeah, I'd highly recommend the zoo. There's red panda too. Obviously, there's other animals, but I didn't include them because they're just like typical zoo animals. Yeah, but I think it was only like $20 too, so definitely worth it. It's a little bit west of downtown near the airport. Other than that, Winnipeg's pretty pretty rough. It's not that interesting of a city really, and a lot of it is, yeah, not that nice. So this is the Forks, which is apparently their tourist attraction. I honestly didn't understand why. Like, I don't know, the river is kind of muddy, and to me it wasn't that spectacular. I did enjoy, or I did like this building. I think it was some type of museum or something across the river. I didn't actually walk there, but you just got a view from there. And then they had this nice bridge. It's a pedestrian bridge that's it's like parallel to a road bridge for Highway 57. And then this, like, the Human Rights Museum is pretty interesting of a building though too. But other than that, yeah, Winnipeg, I don't know, it wasn't that nice. I went downtown, and downtown had a lot of homeless people around and stuff. This is the hockey arena where the Winnipeg Jets play. I also drove up to the North End, which is, I've always heard, is like the worst part of Canada, and yeah, it was pretty rough. Not as bad as Vancouver for like homeless, having a lot of homeless people and stuff, but yeah, it was pretty run down and bad looking. The legislature though was also very nice. The As I said earlier, there's construction going on one side, on the north side, then the east side there's a bit of a protest, but the protest was kind of off to the side. It didn't really uh, impact me visiting it. It was like an indigenous rights or indigenous protest type of thing. Like, there's a bunch of like tents and teepees and stuff up. They were just camping there. They weren't really making much noise or anything. Yeah, so then I just left Winnipeg, and then I took Highway 16 from just west of Portage La Prairie because I didn't want to take Highway 1 both ways. So this is in Gladstone, Manitoba. I don't know what the point of it is or why it's there, but it's kind of interesting. Happy Rock is just another roadside attraction. And this is where I stayed. It was in Russell, which is almost in Saskatchewan. Yeah, I think, yeah, I don't know, 10 minutes maybe from the Saskatchewan border. As you can see, there's the Manitoba sign, so this is their welcome center. I just slept there. I don't think anyone ever, like, there's nobody there when I first got there, and there's nobody there when I left, so I don't know if anyone even knew that I was sleeping there. But yeah, then I went towards Saskatoon. Saskatoon's a nice city. There's this river. That's the thing with Winnipeg, like the river was like, it's so flat that the river doesn't really create this like valley type of thing like Saskatoon and Edmonton and Calgary and stuff. So I thought Saskatoon was pretty nice for the most part. Downtown was kind of interesting. I went to the mall downtown, which was actually surprisingly fancy because I wasn't expecting much, because I'd just gone to the Portage Place Mall or whatever it's called downtown Winnipeg, which is pretty rough. But yeah, so Saskatoon, I'd like to actually spend more time there because I just kind of drove through it. They had this nice old hotel, and then on the northwestern side of the city, right along the highway, they had a Gordie Howe statue because I think he's from Saskatoon. This is at their Sasktel Center. Sasktel, it's kind of hard to say. The hockey arena. So then I just drove through Saskatchewan. So actually, Saskatchewan's the only province that I never slept in on this trip. So this is the Vegreville Easter egg. It's the world's largest Ukrainian Easter egg, Vegreville, Alberta, a few hours east of Edmonton. So So then I went to Edmonton to see the hockey arena. I hadn't been to Edmonton since they built the new arena. It's kind of an interesting area around it. They also had this neon sign museum. Is like an outdoor museum. It's completely free. It's just along the sidewalk. It's 104th Street Northwest, just across the street from the hockey arena. Yeah, and then I went to the Legislature Building, which unfortunately it was also under construction or under renovations. Yeah, but I really like their building as well. The dome is nice, and they have a nice fountain and everything around it. So then the next day I just stayed in Sherwood Park at Walmart again. This is where Edmonton, I guess they're called Edmonton Elks now, the football team. I think this is the biggest stadium in Canada in terms of capacity, Commonwealth Stadium. This is another one of those situations though where I couldn't really find a parking spot where I was allowed to park. I think this was permit parking or something, so I just kind of took some photos quickly and got back in the car. Went back downtown. I really like this Rogers Place area. It's quite modern and like the design's pretty cool. But it doesn't seem like there's too much going on there when there's no events at the arena. Not a lot of restaurants or anything really. So yeah, they had a Wayne Gretzky statue. This was just beside the new arena. Him holding the Stanley Cup. And then, yeah, I don't know. I really like the design of the building though. And then I went back to the Legislature Building in the daytime. Yeah, as you can see, the fountains are dried up, so that's kind of annoying. But other than that, it's still a nice place to visit. And then I went to the mall. The mall actually had a big hockey tournament. Is the Brick Invitational, I believe it was called. It's like the best. I think they're all 10-year-old players, but the best players of that age group. Apparently, like over 200 of them have like gone on to be in the NHL out of like 30 years that the tournament's been going on. So that's pretty impressive. And you get people like teams from all over Canada and the US competing in this. So that was an interesting surprise. So I actually spent quite a bit of time watching them because even though they're only 10 years old, they're very, very good. Yeah, so West Edmonton Mall is just so much different than any other mall I've been to. Just how much extra stuff there is other than just the stores themselves. I don't know, I just thought this was kind of a funny Lego statue, but there's an amusement park, there's a water park, there's a hotel. This is like, so I think it's called Europa Boulevard or something. There's mini golf down below us, but it's just kind of an interesting design. So then the next day I stayed in the hotel in Edmonton. The next day I went somewhere southeast of downtown where you get a view of the river. I'm not actually sure what the area is called. Google calls it Strathern Park Lookout. But yeah, for some reason I always had this impression that Edmonton wasn't very nice. But I changed my mind after this visit. It is a nice city. I like the river. It's like Calgary. It's very clean. It's just that Edmonton seems to have a lot more areas that are a bit run down and stuff than Calgary. But yeah, I really like this river. You got a nice view. I don't know what these things are, but I like the those pyramid type things. I think it might have been a conservatory. That Muttart Conservatory. I don't know how to pronounce it. And you can kind of see the legislature off there towards the left. But that's unfortunately the dome was under scaffolding. So then, ironically, after having lobster like 4 times or something on the trip and that pizza in Montreal, this is my favorite meal. This is Smash Burger in St. Albert. It's a chain all throughout the US and Canada. I don't know how many Canadian locations they have actually, but yeah, it's really good. Probably one of the best burgers I've ever had. I wish we'd have them in Vancouver. Hopefully they open soon. Anyway, so that was almost the end of the trip. This is just Jasper National Park, so just really nice scenery, a lot of animals and stuff. This is Moline Canyon. Some of these photos aren't that great just because I was worried I didn't want to drop my phone off a cliff. So I couldn't really get like I would have liked to get one pointing directly down, but I didn't want to risk that just for a photo. I don't know, I thought this was interesting because this log was completely stuck there at this weird angle. And then yeah, on the way back to the highway, there's just this deer there, and luckily there's no cars around, so I could just stop there, and he just stopped to look at me. This is actually from the town of Jasper, so it's a nice town. It's similar to Banff. I'd say I like Banff a bit better. Like just the surrounding mountains to me in Banff are a little bit more impressive, and the town itself is more interesting in Banff, but Jasper is still very beautiful. And then this is Athabasca Falls. It's about half an hour or 20 minutes or something south of Jasper. I just was getting there, or I just got there. It was getting dark soon, so I was kind of in a rush. And then I saw this, I don't know what it was, I think it was an elk or something on the way back. And then I got into BC. I stayed at a rest area just north of Valemont on Highway 16 near Mount Robson. This is Mount Robson. And then the next day I went to Wellsgrey National Park, or Provincial Park, I mean, which by the way is free. So this is called Spahats Falls. I'm not sure exactly how to pronounce it, but very impressive. I really like this like open rock cliff thing. And then this is Helmikin Falls, probably one of the more famous falls in BC. And that's the end of the trip. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I know this was kind of all over the place. My commentary maybe wasn't the best. I kept switching. Sometimes I wanted to describe the photos, sometimes I just wanted to talk about the trip, but I don't know. I hope you enjoyed the video. It's a great trip. I'd highly recommend it. If you have any tips, or if you want any tips, or suggestions or stuff, or something of places you should visit or routes you should take, you can comment or leave a question in the comments, or message me on Discord or something. But yeah, I think I should mention, I think I occasionally was mentioning where I was sleeping. So I was away for a month and I only stayed at 5 hotels, so most of the nights I was sleeping in the car. I have a SUV, so I can, if I put the back seats down, I can lay down a mattress there and sleep comfortably in the back of the car. So most Walmarts allow you to sleep there overnight. There's this website called allstays.com, which they have reviews of Walmart. Not every Walmart is included there, but a lot of them are, and you'll have like people reviewing them to say whether they were allowed to stay there or not, but most Walmarts you're allowed to stay. Also, big truck stops, just don't get in the way of the trucks or the people trying to, like the cars trying to go to the convenience store or whatever. Just park off to the side. Some, like in the west there's Esso truck stops and Petro Pass and stuff, and then in the east there's Irving Big Stop, and then also just some like rest areas, highway rest areas and visitor centers and stuff like that. Some of them seem to let you sleep overnight, so it's a huge money saving tip or advantage if you can sleep in your car. There's no way I would have been able to afford to do this trip if I was staying in a hotel every night. But yeah, I highly recommend this trip. It's probably definitely the best trip I've ever done. It's my first major trip by myself as well. Every other trip has been with my family, except just a short trip to Calgary and a few day trips down to Seattle. But yeah, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. I know it was very long. I'm not sure if I'll break it up into 2 videos, but there'll probably be a condensed version as well. Thanks for watching. Bye.